Call to order, please. Please stand for Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the November 9th, 2017 Hillsborough Township Planning Board meeting. This meeting has been duly advertised according to Section 5 of the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975. Sunshine Law. Roll call, please.
Mr. Wagner, absent. Mr. Hestag, absent. Ms. Beccaretta, absent. Mr. Peason.
Here.
Ms. Forrest, absent. Mr. Scobell.
Here.
Mr. Weinstein.
Here.
Vice Chairman Julian.
Here.
Committeeman Delcourt, absent. Mayor Sarachi.
Here.
Chairman Lapani.
Here. Moving some papers around the dais. All right, so next would be disposition, of minutes dated September 14th, 2017. A copy is in your packet provided. We entertain a motion for approval.
The eligible members, Mr. Chairman, are the mayor, Mr. Peason, Mr. Julian, and yourself, Mr. Scoble, and Mr. Weinstein.
I'll enter a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Mr. Peason.
Yes.
Mr. Scobell.
Yes.
Mr. Weinstein.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Julian.
Yes.
Mayor Sarachi.
Yes.
Chairman Lapani.
Yes. There's no planning board business, no special committee reports. Is there any business from the floor not on today's agenda from the public? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. No consideration of ordinances, so that brings us to our first public hearing. It is public hearing 814 CRE LLC /814 Development, Parking L32.02 /Trailer in L33.01. File 17 PB12 MSPV, time of decision of 2/23 of 18, Block 142, Lot 32.02, 198 Route 206, and Lot 33.01, 210 Route 206. Applicant is seeking preliminary and final major site plan approval, C bulk variance and design waiver and submission waivers for approval to retain an existing temporary trailer on Lot 33.01 and construct 36 parking spaces on Lot 3202 as a temporary parking lot to service the existing veterinary hospital on Lot 33.01, while the new veterinary hospital is construct on Lot 33 on the property in the I-1 Light Industrial Zoning District. Highway approaches must adhere to the I-2 zoning ordinance standards. EC review of 10/23/17. And obviously, Mr. Delcourt has just arrived at 8:35.
7:35.
7:35, excuse me. Counselor, welcome.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. For the record, my name is Jay Bone. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Schiller & Pittenger, P.C. I represent the applicant tonight. As you indicated in your summary, we are seeking approval to continue a previously approved temporary trailer use for the existing veterinary hospital while we would construct the new veterinary hospital on property not quite next door. There's a flagpole between us. That's going to be the subject of the second hearing tonight. I'm going to present the testimony of our engineer, Michael Ford. I have with me several other people who could answer any questions that arise, but I don't want to belabor the point or keep the board unnecessarily long. But I will indicate that in addition to Mr. Ford, I have with us tonight Reed Fenton, who is a principal of the applicant, Dr. Stacy Burdick, who is a veterinarian and chief of staff of the Red Bank Veterinary Hospital, John Dugan, director of facilities and infrastructure, who testified in the related application last time, Gene Clifton, who is the Chief Corporate Development Officer for the parent company for Red Bank Veterinary Hospital, and Jim Llewellyn, who is the licensed site remediation professional dealing with the property on which we're proposing the temporary parking in case any questions arise out of the environmental remediation that's ongoing on that site. Therefore, I'd like to call Mr. Ford and start with his testimony.
Absolutely.
Mr. Chief, I want you to present the chiefs of both sides.
Yes, I do.
Thank you. State your full name, please.
Michael Kenneth Ford, F-O-R-D, with Van Cleef Engineering Associates, 32 Brower Lane, Hillsborough, New Jersey, licensed professional engineer and planner in the state of New Jersey.
Okay.
Appeared before this board numerous times.
We'll accept your qualifications, Mr.
Thank you.
Ford. Welcome.
Mr. Ford, would you briefly describe the proposed temporary parking and temporary trailer, putting particular emphasis on what physical changes from what exists now?
Okay. Maybe I can mark 3 exhibits, A1, A2, A3. All right. Thank you, Bill. A1 is a colorized version of sheet 2 existing features plan that was submitted as part of this application. A2, the middle exhibit, is a colorized version of sheet 3 entitled Temporary Trailer and Parking Site Plan for Red Bank Veterinarian Hospital, which was submitted as part of the application. And A3 is an exhibit entitled Site Exhibit, Hillsborough Veterinarian Hospital. It's a new exhibit. It's a colorized version, basically blending together this application and the application we started at a previous hearing, which is going to be the subject of the second hearing this evening. And I'll describe them in a minute. As Mr. Bowen suggested, the existing condition is a colorized version showing the existing Red Bank Veterinarian Clinic on lot 33.01. And then just to the north of that existing site is lot 32.02 along Route 206, which is running up and down on the right-hand side of the page. The existing Red Bank Veterinarian Hospital has the existing building, and that's in a darker brown color, and the existing temporary trailer that is already at the site that was previously approved. That approval, we acknowledged at the last hearing, had expired. That's the subject of one of the elements of this application is to gain reapproval to maintain that existing temporary trailer. And then the existing site conditions on the property to the north, which is where we've secured a lease with that property owner to provide for temporary parking for the existing veterinarian clinic. And that existing parking is to the south of the existing veterinarian hospital, and you can see it on this aerial view, the parking that's along the gravel driveway that runs between that site, actually on that site, and also to our neighbors to the rear, the Leopardos. So during the construction of the new veterinarian hospital in lot 33, it was brought out at the last hearing regarding that application that there need to be a plan in place to relocate that parking during construction. And that's the second element of this application, and that is why we've secured the lease with our neighbors to the north. There's an existing concrete pad where there was an existing building that was destroyed by fire in the mid-'80s. So we would utilize part of that existing concrete pad, and the only new construction elements that are part of this application would be an expansion of that concrete pad slightly with gravel to facilitate parking spaces, a gravel driveway connecting the two properties, and a paved pathway connecting the two properties. That's the only improvements. There's no new building, there's no expansion of the existing veterinarian hospital. It's simply maintain the trailer and then provide for a place for this existing parking to be relocated, and that would be on that temporary parking area. Once the new hospital is constructed, and I'll go to Exhibit A3 now. Once the new hospital is constructed, which is shown here on the south portion, hope you can see it from where you're at. It's a reduced version of the temporary parking plan, the existing hospital, the driveway to the Leopardo's property that's between the two sites, and then what's added on this plan as well is the place where the new hospital is being constructed and the parking to the rear of that. Once this new hospital construction is completed and a certificate of occupancy has been issued so that the existing veterinarian clinic facilities can be relocated to this new building, and this new existing building is no longer necessary for use by the veterinarian hospital, the temporary trailer would go away, the driveway between the two properties, and the gravel expansion. And what would happen is basically it would go back to Exhibit A1, but for the trailer being gone. So that's in essence our application. There are a number of bulk standard variances or deviations that exist today on the properties. That's outlined in the application. The one new variance, and I say new in quotations because it actually has to do with the existing trailer, which is 46 feet from the right-of-way of Route 206, where the front yard setback required in the zone is 125. So that's a new variance, albeit it's part and parcel to the existing temporary trailer that is already on the property. We are also seeking some design waivers. That is, the temporary parking would be gravel. Lighting would be minimal. We have provided for some lighting, but I'll say, and this is a prelude to the review comments we've received from your professionals, there's been a suggestion that we enhance the proposed lighting for the temporary parking, and we would agree to do that as a condition of any approval the board would grant. And then there are also design waivers with respect to the parking lot, parking space sizes. These are consistent with prior design waivers on other projects that we've proposed. There also is a buffer requirement anytime you have parking spaces in excess of 10 spaces. There's a required buffer of 30 feet from the track boundary. The layout for this temporary parking, and I'm not tall enough for this. The layout for the temporary parking, very good. All right. Thank you. That end? Okay. Very good, okay. This portion of the gravel that's proposed to provide for the temporary parking is right along and behind an existing wood fence. So if you've made a site visit or driven by the site on 206, there's an existing stockade wood fence there now that obscures the view of this area, and we've planned accordingly to utilize that same fence to not only secure the site but provide for that buffer so the parking that's being proposed here shouldn't be visible from Route 206. But we would ask as part of this application that the buffer requirement for this parking, where we do have in excess of 10 spaces in a row, be part of any approval. And then with regards to circulation and traffic, Right now, today, this is the existing parking area. It uses this driveway. There also is an existing driveway to 10 parking spaces right in front of the existing veterinarian clinic. This driveway would be maintained. The 5 spaces would be maintained, which include the handicap parking spaces that are immediately adjacent to the existing facility. And then this driveway connection here alongside a pedestrian paved pathway connecting the parking to the existing facility would be a one-way driveway. So, and this actually came out of, after our last hearing, we prepared in short order this application, but your staff was nice enough to meet with us and give us some preliminary comments and suggestions, and out of that dialogue came, I think, a very good suggestion to provide for this actual driveway connection between the two sites. What it helps to do is facilitate anybody coming to this site that's familiar with the site today would come in this driveway or this driveway, and that if this connection wasn't here, they would have this awkward movement of having to be directed to this other driveway for the existing industrial park to the north of us. By providing for this gravel driveway connection, people can continue to come into the site as they do today. If there's not a space available within these existing parking area, they can just continue in a northbound fashion up to these other new temporary parking spaces. And there's over 20 in this area. And then behind where this existing concrete pad is from the pre-existing building on this site, we've actually shown an additional 8 parking spaces that is in excess of the required number of parking spaces we need for the existing veterinarian hospital with 6 exam rooms. But we felt that it was a good planning element to provide for parking so that the existing hospital operation can continue as it does today without having issues, including those rare occasions where you might have high use and the existing 5 parking spaces are utilized, all the spaces in this area are utilized, and there'd be even opportunity for additional parking over here, such as when, people visiting the existing veterinarian hospital would overlap with, say, other appointments. So one person's coming in, the other person's coming out. And we would envision, if that became an occurrence, that we would actually direct employees, and there's 8 parking spaces to the rear of this property to the north, where we have the lease agreement for the temporary parking. These 8 parking spaces would be designated for employees. So even if they were utilized, we would direct our employees to park there so that even patients wouldn't have to make the walk from that parking area to the existing veterinarian clinic. But what I point out too is, while that looks like a distance, even our existing gravel parking today, and you can see about a dozen cars in this area now, extends over into this area. So even today, there's occasions where we have people parking in this area that have to walk to the front door. So that's, in essence, the application. It's a gravel expansion of an existing impervious area, the pedestrian connection, minimal lighting. We would comply with the tree ordinance, so we've provided for tree mitigation for 1 or 2 trees that would be removed in this area. There's also some existing brush that's immediately adjacent and vegetation that's immediately adjacent to and behind the stockade fence where we propose the gravel temporary parking. And if there's any trees in that area that are such a size that would warrant mitigation, as one of the review memorandums we've received suggests, we would provide for the tree mitigation for that area as well. But we did have an opportunity since the last hearing not only to prepare the site plan, but prepare mapping and site survey work, and there were no trees in that area identified in excess of 6-inch diameter that would warrant mitigation, but we would certainly verify and check that as part of complying with any conditions of approval. Maybe one, let me go to the memos.
There was also a mention of a design waiver for the lack of a loading zone.
Correct. Yeah, the existing hospital and temporary trailer that are there today are to remain as is, unchanged, and there's no loading zone today, so that is a technical waiver requirement that we would request as part of the application. There was also, maybe to get into the couple of memorandums, we received first the fire officials memorandum. They had no objection to the application. We did make a visit to the Environmental Commission, and there was a suggestion that we considered providing additional on-site lighting for the temporary off-site parking, and that was actually reiterated in, I believe, Mr. White's review, and we would comply with that to their satisfaction. Also at the Environmental Commission, we did make a presentation, not only what I've discussed so far, but we've also addressed the fact that the pre-existing building that was here that burnt down in the mid-'80s revealed an underground groundwater contamination issue that's been the subject of an ongoing environmental cleanup that's been headed up by Mr. Litwin and as an LSRP. What we're proposing would not have any adverse impact on that ongoing environmental cleanup, nor would it expose the public to any environmental hazards. This has been verified by the LSRP, and that report was submitted to the township and I believe reviewed by your health official, Dr. BELLE, who also concurred. There's an existing little trailer at the end of where these 8 parking spaces are proposed, and that's part of that environmental cleanup. And then this area in the middle here where we're not proposing any activity is where there are a few monitoring wells and then also connections from the monitoring wells to that trailer groundwater treatment facility that then returns the water via pipes back into the ground. And I don't think that the Environmental Commission had any issues with that condition, and it wouldn't be disrupted by this application at all.
We had just asked that they put concrete barriers around there's monitoring wells there, so the cars don't, hit the monitoring wells. And also, I mean, there's a pump and treat station there, and I think, you're going to provide enough barriers so that, you don't have any obstruction with that either.
Correct.
So,
Thank you.
just for the record.
I read that.
Maybe the next 2 items are the reports that we received. Let me we do have already approval from the Soil Erosion and Sediment Control District. We've made application to the Somerset County Planning Board as well as to the Delaware and Raritan Canal Commission to confirm that this activity would be exempt from their jurisdiction. The applicant would be anxious to proceed with this activity, that is providing for the temporary parking and maintaining that trailer as soon as possible. By virtue of having the Soil Erosion and Sediment Control District approval, believe that the only other remaining approval would be this planning board approval and satisfying those conditions in order to proceed with the minimal construction activity that's being proposed here. We do have a November 6th, 2007 review memorandum from Mr. White's office. We would agree to all the suggestions and conditions that are suggested in that review memorandum. I think as far as clarification of operation, the plan would not be to change anything with the existing operation of the veterinarian hospital. That is the current operational hours, which I understand are 24/7 because it is an emergency veterinarian clinic, would continue. So that wouldn't be changed as part of this application at all. And then we also have a November 2nd, 2017 review memorandum from Mr. Maskey's office, or Mr. Maskey. The lease agreement, as Mr. Maskey points out, did include a provision that stated that the lease agreement would include temporary parking for employees only. That's already been rectified by the applicant. We can provide a copy of that change that would, allow any parking, that is not just employee parking on this site to the north, but also the patients and people that, well, not really the patients. They don't drive there.
I hope not.
The owners of the patients.
See the Subaru commercial?
So that's not an issue?
Number A, how about skipping back, start from the beginning?
Okay.
The 90-day.
Yes, the 90-day clause. There is in the lease agreement, and I understand this is somewhat customary with legal agreements, that the owners of the property to the north have a provision that they can elect to get out of this lease agreement with 90 days' notice. We don't envision that would happen. It's an unlikely occurrence, but in the event that does occur, what the Red Bank Veterinarian Clinic would propose to do would be just what actually they do at their Tinton Falls office today, and that is secure a contract with an off-site valet parking provider. That is, I'll say, an Uber-like provider that would, anybody that came in to visit the clinic would give their car to a valet parking, and the valet parking would make provisions with some other off-site parking area to park the car.
They do it.
That's what they do today.
They do it today at Red Bank. It's right around the corner from my office.
Do you have, though, some idea of where that would take place? I mean, let's say, you say, well, it's unlikely it would happen, sure, but if it did get terminated, do you have any, you're familiar with 206? Do you
Right.
have an idea of where you would want to put the parking, where you might be able to?
Yeah, no, we don't. I don't know that they've talked to the same provider that they use at the Tinton Falls office, but I don't know that it's gone that far in the
That's kind of far to
list.
go.
Yeah. No, that would be the same provider. The valet parking provider would be the same contract person they use there. The other option would be, and literally, this would be similar to if the existing parking went away because of some sinkhole developing in the parking lot, would be that they would have to cease operation.
Except that that would be a natural occurrence. This is something that's in the hands of a third party. The owner of that property could terminate it within 90 days.
Right, and the reaction could be the same as the
I'm not saying
unnatural
the same-
occurrence.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
right.
all right.
Just a quick question on the pathway. Will that be lit at all, or is it?
We do, there is a light
Minimum.
pole proposed at this location now, and what the comment from the staff is to provide some more lighting in this area, and what we
Yeah.
thought that with this temporary trailer being right here alongside the pathway, is that we could do some building-mounted lighting, low-level lighting
Okay.
on the trailer, and the ideal situation there would be that when the trailer goes away, so does the lighting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
All right, I just want to make sure that
Sure,
we don't
yes.
have people walking in the dark.
No.
While we're on the subject of lighting, and I'll defer to Bill on this, this is a 24/7 operation. People are ostensibly parking there in the middle of the night. Would you agree to provide a lighting plan that would meet Mr. White's
Yes.
satisfaction?
Absolutely, absolutely. We do have lighting, the application did propose lighting, albeit minimal. And actually, we were trying to do a balancing act between providing adequate lighting, but not providing too much lighting that would potentially offend someone with, off-site glare. What's been suggested is to add some more lighting, and we'll give those details to Mr. White's office for his review and approval. just like any other site lighting that we do.
In your lease agreement, who is required to maintain those parking lots as far as snow, ice, and that kind of thing? Is that yours?
That's us.
You are responsible for that?
Correct.
Okay.
Would you agree, going back to A, that if you do get a 90-day termination notice, you would also immediately notify the township?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hold on a second.
And return to the board for
A report.
Well, not just a report. If the landlord ceases this agreement, you don't have temporary parking. And that's the variance you're seeking relative to the situation at hand. So you'd have to come back to the board with a new option on how you're planning on handling the temporary parking.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah. As part and parcel to the lease agreement, it was there's a suggestion that we provide for a cross-access easement. It was our envision that this is one way. There would only be use of this area by our, the owner or the applicant and the operator of the existing veterinarian hospital. There's not any understanding that anybody from this property to the north would drive through, and this is a one-way driveway anyway. So the lease agreement covers the use of this land, but to any level that there's additional legal documents or when you refer to a cross-access easement, whatever you would need to satisfy
Correct me
that.
if I'm wrong, but the lease agreement obviously gives you permission to park on that property. But I
Correct.
don't see anything that allows anybody to cross over the property line to access it, as opposed to, if I just read this lease agreement as is, I would think you have to enter it through the driveway on that property. There's nothing that says you come across the property lines to access it.
We can have
We can-
perhaps the lease agreement amended to clarify that.
We can clarify that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the leasee has reviewed the plan.
Obviously, has consented to this application.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah, I just want to make sure that people
It's
don't have to
included.
use that they can come in and access
Right.
across the property lines. Okay.
But the leasee couldn't put up a fence between our property and their property.
Something like that.
Right, understood. I'll say that, is there any other ones, Mr. Maskey? that-
Yeah, all of them.
Okay. The signage, we would agree to that. We would agree to providing additional signage.
Okay,
What's
just
been
with-
suggested, I can go through each one. I'll go through each one.
Yeah, just for the board's benefit on
Okay.
D, and when I met with Mr. Ford, and if you recall from the prior hearing, there was some disagreement with the property owner to the rear, that people were parking on his property without permission, et cetera. So I think one of the objectives here is to clean that process up, and I had suggested to Mr. Ford that, well, and I think you might even have painted a white line down, that people with this new setup would know they're not supposed to park on Mr. Leopardo's property. So a sign and a stripe might go far so people realize, of course, they're used to parking over there now. So they need something to tell them, no, you have to park over there now.
And we would agree to do that to Mr. Maskey's and Mr.
Or
White's
even a split
satisfaction
rail
with
fence, a
signage.
cheap fence or a split rail fence, just so people you don't have that problem anymore.
Yes.
About, will there be something that will indicate where the overflow parking is?
That would be part of the directional signage. In this area, that there's parking this way, additional parking this way. Yeah. And then E, am I up to E?
Yep.
Okay. The existing driveway, what's suggested in in item E is the existing driveway now for the existing vet clinic on Route 206 is two-way, both in and out. What's being suggested is to make it just in only and preclude people from exiting this driveway. We've discussed that with the applicant, and what we would like to do is maintain that existing access the way it is today, such that, like in those time periods when these 5 spaces are utilized and there's not a high number of vehicles, that people aren't still forced to drive north on this gravel driveway through the neighbor's property and out this way. And that would help to possibly not add any more traffic than is absolutely necessary to this driveway, albeit it all goes out to Route 206. So we'd like to keep that function the way it is today, but we would defer to the board if they would agree and rather have this just be an entrance and not an exit as well, that we would comply with that suggestion as well. But our preference would be to not further, I'll say, disrupt the existing function and change this to just an entrance only and allow for people to exit as well, albeit the fact is it would only be used by these 5 spaces, because once you commit to going up this driveway to this additional temporary parking, there would be no entry one-way signs posted in this location. This driveway is not wide, it's only about 12 feet wide, and people would be directed with signage to exit to the north and out this way. So albeit for only 5 people, we'd like to maintain that convenience of being able to exit at that driveway. That would be our preference. And from a traffic or an engineering standpoint, I don't see an adverse, I'll say a substantial adverse condition or impact to either way. It's really just a matter of convenience and maintaining the existing condition the way it is.
Is there any thought, and I'm just thinking this, obviously, you're going to have all sorts of different conditions with your patients, of having a designated drop-off? Because I'm foreseeing someone comes with a dog that doesn't move very well, and they're not going to want to have to go park all the way at another lot and bring that injured animal down the parking area. And then the same thing, when they get out, they're going to want to go to the car and have a car come around and go pick up. So you're going to have this instance, if you don't designate something, in my opinion, that are going to want to come back down the driveway the wrong way because they don't want to have to schlep this animal that they can't carry, possibly if it's a large animal, 60 feet to their car.
Right.
So again, now you lose a parking spot, but I just foresee an issue with people wanting to do that because they're not parking very close to the clinic.
Are you suggesting a designated parking space for that, or
Well,
just a drop-off loading?
A drop-off loading and unloading. Then people can bring their injured animal into the facility, then go park the car. And then the same thing, when they're done, they can go get the car, come back, load the injured animal into the car, and keep the
Can we
traffic.
use the handicap access aisle for that?
Well, no, I was going to say is that by code, you only need to have 1 handicap space.
Right.
So why don't we just convert one of the handicap spaces into a loading,
Emergency.
loading or temporary parking
Yeah.
space? And
Just thinking,
And that's right in front of the clinic.
right,
Right.
Yeah, that's fine.
and
And we can do it with striping and
and
signage.
signage.
Yeah.
Just, I've had some large dogs, and,
Yeah.
they're not always easy to move.
No. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
As a courtesy.
My concern with the one-way in only was there's not a lot of room to maneuver in those 5 spaces when you pull in. And again, people will not have the option of crossing over the Leopardo property to just swing right back out again. That's why I had suggested one-way in only at that point, as opposed to people trying to back out or pull back out onto 206 while people are coming in that way. Bill, what do you think?
I think you have 5 spaces there now. Now we're down to 4. In reality, you only have 3.
Mm-hmm.
The handicap spot is what
Right.
I'm referring to. I think it's such a low turnover that it's not going to be a real issue.
Okay.
I think right now you're moving majority of the traffic further north for the egress, because the fact of the matter is that they use the 2 driveways right next to each other right now.
Right.
So I don't foresee that being an issue.
All right. So you're okay with leaving it 2-way? in and out?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
you'd want to leave it 2-way. I'd want to keep down the amount of traffic, keeps going up to the overflow parking area, to the stone area.
Maybe I complete there's a page 4, item F regarding lighting. We've discussed that. Item G, with regards to the brush, I've mentioned that in my testimony. Item H, with regards to the parking, what's being pointed out is actually these 8 spaces back here are not absolutely necessary to comply with the township standard. What we would prefer to do is just keep them to provide for good planning and, not avoid an issue where we run out of parking and have to park in other places, and that would be designated for employees and, an operational standard. Item I, with regards to the traffic, we just discussed that. Actually, we're not proposing any changes to the driveway at this location or the existing driveway that accesses the site to the north. The operation of the facility is to remain essentially unchanged. That is, there's no expansion of use or additional traffic anticipated at the site as part of this application. So the traffic is what it is and will stay as it is today on Route 206, and moving the traffic from this location or exiting to this location, we don't believe there would be any adverse impacts to existing circulation or traffic. Our neighbors to the north are industrial users with a low, it's not a commercial or retail area, so it's a low traffic generator, so there's no adverse impact anticipated. And then general item J, specific time as to when the temporary trailer would be removed. The temporary trailer is this area right here. That would be removed as soon as the existing facility is opened. The new facility is open and the existing facility and operation can be moved to it. The trailer is leased now, so there's an incentive to decommission it and removing it as soon as possible because there's a lease agreement and a monthly payment associated with that trailer. The applicant doesn't own it.
But that sounds awfully open. That's how we got here.
That's
how we got here in the first place, though, because it was for 2 years, now it's 3 years, and now you're saying an open-ended, it's there until you
No,
build
I'm
the other
not.
building?
I'm trying to get to, what we would agree to do is immediately file for the demolition permit as we get close to the certificate of occupancy for this. And as you know, that it takes some time to get the demolition permit. The actual trailer that's there right now actually sits on, I understand, in excess of 15 concrete columns. There's plumbing associated with it. So as soon as it's not utilized anymore, and if the board wants to put a time date as to when we have to file for the demolition permit, immediately as soon as the CO is issued for the new facility, we would make that application. I think the only, trouble we would have to when it's actually physically removed is it also predicates or is the timing of when it's actually off-site is subject to the issuance of a demolition permit. So as soon as the demolition permit is issued, we can agree to, within 30 days of when the demolition permit is issued, it being removed, but it would have to be when we get the demolition permit.
So,
I
Michael,
don't
maybe
know.
ask it a little more specifically. How long do you expect to remain in this temporary state? In a perfect world, I know there's all kinds of factors.
The builder of the facility, Mr. Fenton, flew here from Michigan to be here for this evening's meeting, and he's been after me since I've been involved with him since spring to get him a construction permit, and I've tried to enlighten him about how Hillsborough works and what time it takes to get permits. But our schedule is to break ground in the spring. As soon as he actually would break ground right now if he had the opportunity. We're only here because the prior site plan approval expired, and we couldn't get a permit to build the new facility. So we expect that construction schedule, albeit start in spring, to be CO'd by the end of next year.
That's all I was asking.
That's the expectation. And it's not a big building, it's a 10,000 square foot building.
That's what I was looking for.
So that's what that's what we're looking for.
Thank you.
So a year from now would be our hope. And Mr. Maskey's absolutely right. This has been a long time coming. There's been a number of different factors and owners involved, but now we feel like we have the development team in place and most importantly, the financing in place to make it all happen.
And letter L.
Oh,
I'm sure you'll say that's fine.
yes.
You'll
Distribute a flyer to instruct the clientele of the existing veterinarian hospital of this new facilities operation with the new temporary parking arrangement.
We kind of skipped over K, I think.
Yep.
I'm sorry, did I?
Oh.
Well, that was, okay, I'm sorry. I thought we discussed that, but that's, is part of I. I think we kind of morphed into the same thing, but go ahead.
Right.
We would want to make certain that we were able to submit for a building permit and have those plans reviewed while the process of getting the temporary parking in place was done, so that they're able to start construction as soon as possible after that happens.
Say that again, please.
The comment
Can you speak into
suggests
the
that-
microphone too, please, Counselor? I'm sorry.
sorry.
Thank you.
The comment suggests that the new parking lot should be in place prior to the issuance of any permits.
Mm-hmm.
And we would like to ask that we be allowed to submit a building permit application. And although I understand that this board doesn't tell the construction official what to do, we would hope that the construction official would review that application and give us any feedback necessary so that we would be in a position to get a permit as soon as the temporary parking lot was operational. So that the construction is not delayed, so we can start when we intend and finish when we have projected we'll be able to finish.
Okay. Yeah, generally speaking, the building department won't issue a building permit unless you have a zoning permit. And you won't have the zoning permit issued if you haven't fulfilled all the conditions. So as long as you understand that. We don't want you to get rid of the current temporary parking before you have the new temporary parking in place.
Yeah, our goal, Mr. Maskey, is to start this construction of this temporary parking immediately. In fact, if this board were inclined to do so, we would proceed with the construction tomorrow if it was permitted at our risk. That is, we have the soil erosion and sediment control approval. We don't believe this is not on a county road or have any county adverse impact, and we have the DNR Canal Commission exemption pending. But we'd like to proceed with the laying down of the stone, if you will, and the pavement for the pathway as soon as possible. So if the board were inclined to act favorably for this application, and a resolution of approval could be drawn up and brought back at your next board meeting, between now and then, we would actually endeavor to try to satisfy all these conditions. There's not a lot of plan changes that are being requested of us, and then be able to immediately proceed with the construction of the temporary parking so that it is in place, and at the same time, satisfy all the conditions of the approval for the site plan for the new facility and start construction as soon as possible. So whatever help the board can give us in that endeavor, we would like to do that.
So you're saying that you're actually going to, if we were to grant your approval, you're going to start doing the construction of the parking, even though you don't have the ordinance, I guess, would be in place, or the affidavit saying so?
The resolution.
Memorialized.
Correct.
At your own risk.
Right.
Is that
I
possible?
don't know if we can do that.
Yeah.
You're going to have to get permits from Mr. Bellinger
Right?
in engineering, and he's not going to issue a permit on something that hasn't been approved yet.
I would think so, right?
Yeah, so.
All right. Is there anything else on what the testimony was on your comments that you need to?
No, he's
Okay.
addressed all my concerns,
So just-
Chairman.
We're not going to require a specific time on the temporary trailer? Is that, we're just going to, as soon thereafter as the new building is constructed, that's up to the board, but if just, I didn't get an answer or a
Looks like-
specific.
So they were requesting possibly that they would file for a demolition permit within 30 days of the final CO. Is that kind of what you were suggesting?
But understand, Mr. Chairman, that's the filing of the demolition permit,
But not removal of the...
not remove the trailer, because my understanding is they want to keep the trailer on the site while they're doing the demolition, and then remove the trailer.
No, the demolition permit would
Is
be
of the
for
trailer.
the trailer.
Right.
We need a permit from the construction department of this township to decommission the trailer. We needed a permit to install it. So the demolition permit would be for the removal of the trailer.
And how long would it take to remove the trailer once a demolition permit was granted?
30 days.
Then would the board be willing to place in the resolution that the trailer will be removed within 30 days, 30 calendar days, after a demolition permit is received from the township?
I might even give them
Maybe give them a
60.
little latitude, yeah.
Yeah, give them 60, no more than 60?
45.
45?
For God's sakes.
Rip it down, blow it up. Okay.
It's not being blown up. My understanding is it's a rented trailer. It's going to be taken off and carted off. I mean,
It's on wheels?
It's in two pieces.
Two pieces, right?
Right.
Okay. So
It's not on wheels now because you can't have a temporary even construction trailer sitting on wheels in this township.
You have to reattach the wheels.
Yes, you got to have it secured to the ground with
Concrete.
hurricane straps. It's
Right.
it's per the construction department permits. It's a requirement.
Okay.
For the law.
All
You
right.
sure you want to limit yourself to that 90 days also? Like, why don't you go for beyond that, you know? That,
Which 90
the 90 days for the temporary parking?
No, the demolition permit for the trailer removal would be also at the same time we would be removing the temporary parking.
The issue,
Yeah.
Neil, with the 90 days is there's a provision in the lease agreement that says for various reasons, the owner of the property can terminate the lease with a 90-day notice. The answer is if he gives the 90-day notice, A, the applicant has agreed to notify the township, and if they have no temporary parking at that point, they've got to come back to us, but by the time that period of time expires. Otherwise, we're right back to where we are right now, because at the moment, they're actually occupying temporary parking in violation of.
Yeah, that's what I was saying, like, why don't you extend it longer than that? But
Landlords.
it's a
Landlord.
Yeah, it's part of the lease agreement.
I understand
Yeah.
that, but I didn't know if there was any reason for the 90 days, or it's just one of those,
The landlord.
the landlord, okay. It's up to you.
Anything else, David?
No, that's it. Just to clarify, though, you'll be submitting a new lease agreement or amended lease agreement that shows that
shows that
anybody can
customers
park there, and
can
then
park there.
addresses the cross-access.
Correct.
Okay. All right, that's it.
Okay. So I guess we have in front of us the motion to open to public.
Second.
Any questions from the public for Mr. Ford? I only see one public. Do you have any questions? Okay. Any other testimony you wanted to provide for this?
As I indicated in my opening, we have a number of other people who could provide testimony. I didn't get the sense that there were any unanswered questions during Mr. Ford's testimony, so I'll invite if the board wants to hear from any of the people. Otherwise, I think we've satisfied the comments of your professionals, and I'd like to proceed.
It's just for part.
Just for the part one.
Mr. Chair, can I ask the LSRP just to clarify one thing in the Environmental Commission letter of November 7th, please?
Absolutely.
Sure.
Let me bring him up.
Then let's have James Llewellyn come up.
I just got one, there's this one.
Please write in. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. State your full
I
name,
do.
spelling your last name.
Name is W. James Llewellyn, Llewellyn.
Have a seat.
Yeah, have a seat. I just wanted to ask you about the hoses in the parking lot there. Were you able to clarify what they were used for?
Mr. Julian, before
Yes,
Mr.
the next,
Hold on.
Yeah, we should.
Why don't we have Mr. Llewellyn at least place on the record by whom he's employed and what his qualifications are before he,
Absolutely.
thank you.
name's W. James Llewellyn. I'm an LSRP for Appalachia Hydrogeologic and Environmental Consulting LLC at 678 Route 202-206 North, Building 5, Unit 4, Bridgewater, New Jersey, 08807.
Okay, and for the record, let me just read it then so that everybody understands what we're talking about. There was a site walk during a site visit. It was noted that there were hoses seen on the grounds from the well to the treatment trailer. Mr. Llewellyn was not sure of the purpose of the hoses since all the wells were connected to the treatment system via the underground piping, but we'll look into the matter. So I was just wondering if you had an opportunity to look into the matter and can clarify that.
Absolutely. After our meeting, the next day, I contacted the operator of the system. His name is Tom Boland. He's from Aviation Consulting. Asked him about those above-ground lines. He indicated that the initial extraction wells, in between these two parking areas were installed with subsurface lines, and they still exist today and are still utilized today. And then there were 3 additional wells put in the same area at a later date that had above-ground lines leading to the treatment center, which is here, the treatment trailer. Of course, I asked him about potential freezing and whatnot, and he says, well, it's been running since 2000 and we haven't had that problem. As long as there's water flowing through the lines, there isn't a freezing issue with those lines.
You're okay with that?
I am okay with that.
And are the above-ground lines protected from potential impacts from the temporary
You need to
parking?
speak into the mic.
Into the mic, please.
Are the above-ground lines protected from potential interference from the cars utilizing the temporary parking lot?
They are. The lines run from, again, these extraction wells over land or subsurface to the eastern side of this treatment trailer, and then enter the treatment trailer there. So there's parking here, proposed parking here, proposed parking there, and these lines run through there to the treatment trailer. And I have been to the site and looked and verified that that's what those lines are.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Wait, you're not done.
Any questions? Any questions from the public on the LSRP testimony? For this testimony? Now you can go. All right, so I guess we need some clarification as to what we're asking, because I don't think we actually heard an exact answer as to, in the application, as far as the application for the demo permit was 30 days from
From the issuance of the CO.
issuance of the CO. And then the actual removal of the temporary trailer, 45 days from the issuance of the demo permit. Correct. Right? Is that correct, Counselor?
That's my understanding of the tenor of the board's discussion.
Okay. Any other comments or adds to that? Changes? Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
now that Mr. Ford is back up there, Mr. Ford, could you put some testimony on the record in support of the variances that are required?
Okay, sure. The bulk variances are with regards to, as part of the application, we submitted a narrative. This is in the I2 zone, or as was stated in the introduction, we have the added enhanced bulk standards because the property fronts 206, Route 206. So the minimum lot size required is 2 acres. Both of these parcels of land, that is 33.01 and 32.02, are approximately 1 acre in size. So they don't comply with the minimum lot standard. There's also a minimum lot frontage requirement of 300 feet. Both of the existing properties do not comply with that minimum required lot frontage or lot width requirement. As I stated earlier, The temporary trailer is 46 feet from the right-of-way or front property line, where 125 feet minimum required setback is required. And then there is a minimum side yard setback requirement of 50 feet in the existing veterinarian hospital. And there's no existing permanent structure on 32.02. I'm referring to the existing structure on 33.01, the veterinarian clinic hospital site, and the existing side setback for the existing building is 17.54 feet, so that doesn't comply with the 50-foot minimum standard. And then there also is a minimum lot depth requirement of 300 feet. The existing lot 33.01, the existing veterinarian hospital site is 266.46 feet in depth and does not comply with that bulk standard. These are all existing nonconformities. They're not being exacerbated or worsened by this application, but for the front setback, obviously, of the existing main structure of the existing veterinarian clinic is somewhat further back from Route 206 than the existing trailer, so that front yard setback of the existing trailer we're requesting to maintain, albeit because that prior approval expired, is 46 feet from Route 206. And in order to eliminate any of those standards, albeit except for even the temporary trailer, which already exists, you would have to remove the structures or add land. So we believe they qualify for hardship bulk standard variance approval.
And do you believe that there will be any, can you see any detriment to the public good by the temporary approval?
Microphone, please.
The only important person is the guy sitting the 2 rows back. If he's not happy, nobody's happy.
Yeah, these are all existing conditions. They're not being exacerbated by the application. They're not being changed. The existing conditions would not have any substantial impairment to the town zoning code or master plan, nor would they have an adverse impact on the public.
Okay. Any other questions from public on additional testimony? Okay, motion to close public.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so we have a motion, or we have a request for a approval with the improvements based on our professionals as far as lighting. We talked about the demo permit, 30 being taken or applied for within 30 days of the certificate of occupancy or permanent CO. The removal of the trailer within, a temporary trailer within 45 days of the issuance of that demo permit. I think we also talked about, in lieu of one parking spot, indicating a drop-off area for patients, so to speak, in lieu of one parking spot in the front of the existing building. Signage that would be inclusive to direct for the people to park in the temporary site. And then also, I believe, the lighting would be brought up and changed to the Mr. Maskey's, Mr. White's, I'm sorry, Mr. Maskey, Mr. White's approval. Is there anything else that I missed on your application that we brought up? I think that's it, right?
Well, just quickly, there'll be a revised lease agreement submitted.
Revised lease agreement, yes, that's correct.
Signage will be installed to, for wayfinding signage, and also to keep people off neighboring property. Lighting was discussed.
Concrete barriers around the
Concrete
wells.
barriers around the wells, and/or the above-ground hoses as well.
Okay.
And it will be distributing a flyer to the clients. Right.
Okay. That's it. So we have a motion to approve the, as we discussed.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you. We have a second?
Second.
Thank you. We'll have a roll call.
Yes. Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Scoville?
Yes.
Mr. Weinstein?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Julian?
Yes.
Committeeman Del Picor?
Yes.
Mayor Sarachi?
Yes.
Chairman LaPlante?
Yes. We're going to take a brief 10-minute break. We will reconvene at 8:45.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, he'll catch it. All right. We're back in order. It's 8:46. I just want to keep getting out of here, I guess.
Still on daylight savings?
Yeah. Welcome back. We are now going to the next public hearing. That would be 814 CRE LLC, 814 Development Veterinary Hospital. File 17 PV04 MSPV, time of decision 11/14/17, Block 142, Lot 33, 212, Route 206. Applicant is seeking preliminary and final major site plan approval, C bulk variance for side yard setback, submission waivers, from providing a CIS, and parking design waiver to construct a new veterinary hospital with parking and stormwater improvements on property in the I-1 Light Industrial Zoning District. Highway approaches must adhere to I-2 zoning ordinance standards, EC review of 7/24/17, adjourned from October 12, 2017, without further notice. Mr. Bone.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. For the record, in this application, my name is Jay Bone. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Schiller and Pittenger, PC. I represent the applicants. This is a continuation of a public hearing that commenced on September 14th. It was adjourned to October and further adjourned without notice until this evening. At the time of the initial public hearing, we presented substantially all our testimony, but got to an issue of the legality of the temporary trailer on the adjacent site and the requirement that previous approval, which had expired, be further extended, and a discussion of where the parking for the customers would be accommodated while we undertook construction on this site. Those two major questions have been answered in the hearing that was completed a few minutes ago this evening, and so I believe that those issues have been taken care of. I have Mr. Ford remains here to answer any further questions. I have a number of other people from the applicant and/or the operating entity of the facility who could answer any further questions. I don't know if we got through all of the board's reports. I have them with me tonight, so I propose that either if Mr. Maskey or Mr. White have any concerns that any item in their report wasn't addressed, we proceed to that.
Okay, we'll start with Mr. Maskey. Anything from?
Mr. Ford, I remind you, you're still under oath from the prior application, and you're still qualified, at least for the moment.
Yes. Good evening.
Hello. In the, going through, Mr. Maskey's comments from the previous meeting, I don't think we got, I don't know my notes here, I don't know if we got past, D or E, we were and we got kind of to E, the last one we got to.
Mhm.
So maybe we could just, since it wasn't that far, we'll just start at the top at A and maybe we'll just, for the testimony again, go through those.
Okay, and so we're at page 3 of
Page-
Mr. Maskey's report?
Yeah.
Is
The
August 10th. August 10th, 2017 memorandum, under the general comments.
Okay, and this is the section of Mr. Maskey's report where he's discussing the standards for the architectural and site design overlay zone.
Above that,
We're above that, we're above the...
letter E,
above-
top of the page.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was looking at a different A.
4E, where we got sidetracked on the issue of the...
The temporary trailer and
temporary
parking.
trailer and parking, so I think you're going to start with F.
Applicants ought to provide signed package for the site demonstrating compliance with Section 188-83.
We'd agree to do that.
Okay.
Route 206 improvements.
Yes, sir.
The site plan that's the subject of this application was previously approved by the Board of Adjustment, and actually all the conditions of that prior approval were satisfied, including securing a NJDOT permit. But for the period of time that's lapsed since then, we're back to the town for site plan reapproval, and we've also made application to NJDOT for the renewal of that driveway permit. I'll tell the board that we've already received comments from NJDOT. We've responded to those comments. That would include, there was a prior suggestion in the plan showed a sidewalk along 206. We've eliminated that at the suggestion of DOT because this is actually in that section between the bypass and the completed improvements of 206 up by Duke Farms that we understand now the state is actually in the design phase of. The improvements along this section of Route 206 would include a similar widening that's north of here, that is 2 lanes in each direction, north and southbound, with a concrete median down the middle. So there's some property that's already been acquired from this site that would facilitate that widening. And actually the DOT parcel maps for this section of the, I'll call it the middle section of the 206 improvements in 206 in Hillsborough, actually indicates this future driveway for the Red Bank Veterinarian Clinic. And part of that prior DP or DOT permit included not only the new driveway, but there actually were 2 access driveways to the existing facility. One, and I'm referring to A2 that I put back up on the board that was one of the exhibits that was entered at the public hearing in September. And A3 is the middle rendering, the proposed site improvements. But A2 shows the pre-existing conditions. There were existing structures that were actually since removed from the site as part of that prior site plan approval, but they included a driveway on the south section of the site as well as the north section. So it would be consolidated into one new driveway, and that's what actually the current DOT parcel maps show for this section. And certainly any condition of approval would be, conditioned upon us re-securing that DOT permit.
Yeah, I think we did discuss this at the last hearing, but the context for this comment was that, as you know, DOT is actively designing the remainder of the 206 project, and the idea was that we didn't run into the same problem that Mr. Ford ran into actually with the senior housing, where the DOT access people didn't talk to the DOT design people, and there was some major issues with placing utilities in the ground that had to be moved. So we just wanted to make sure you talk to the design group as well as the access group at DOT. It's unlikely that it would impact this, but just to make sure that you have the word from the design group, at least, that everything you're proposing is within the right-of-way as they're going to redesign 206. So have you done that?
Yes. Yes. And actually what we can do is provide the township, if they don't have it as a matter of record already, that DOT parcel map that actually shows this previously permitted driveway we're seeking to have reapproved. That'll be a matter of public record, and it's on the DOT right-of-way plans.
Could I ask one other question here? If we back up to be in lieu of the new temporary parking, one of the questions we had was cross-access easement between Lot 33B and 34 because of the fact that you were going between the 2 properties across the neighbor's driveway. Is that something that we don't need to address anymore due to the fact that you've moved the parking?
Are you talking about C?
C, yes, sir.
C, that actually is in place already. Part of the prior site plan approval for the proposed veterinarian clinic included a condition to provide for a cross-access easement on Lot 33 that would allow access north-south through the property, and that's already been filed,
Okay.
and so that's in place, yeah. That wouldn't change. We're not looking to change that.
All right.
Okay. We submitted architectural plans and our architectural rendering as part of the application. That's what we would seek to build. If there's any issues or concerns with that architectural treatment with that proposed building, we could address that as a condition of approval over the board. Members have any suggestions or comments, we could address those. But that would be.
Go through the standards that are listed here to see which waivers you might need.
This particular, I think actually we did discuss some of these at the last hearing. Because of, and this was actually, I think, a testimony of another witness on behalf of the applicant. The design standards suggest that the buildings be oriented with the front entrance out toward 206, but because of the unique operation of this facility, the main entrance is actually at the back of the facility, adjacent to the parking lot. And I understood from discussions that that seemed appropriate for this type of facility with the patients being brought in and out by the owners in a safe manner at the rear of the facility rather than immediately adjacent to Route 206. And then the portion of the building that would be, in, I guess, our view, the back of the building that would actually face Route 206 has been, in our opinion, treated with an architectural theme and nature such that while it doesn't look like the front of a building and invite people to walk up to it, we're not providing any sidewalk along 206, as I just said, and there's no sidewalk along the driveway, so it's not like bless you. We envision pedestrian traffic to the front of the building. We also haven't treated that portion of the building that faces Route 206 as if it were a quote-unquote typical rear of the building. It's treated in a similar architectural fashion to the main entrance to the building. It's a single-story building. I know there's suggestions in the design standards that you normally have a two-story building. And again, as I recall, there was testimony that because of this, operation, there's not an elevator, there's not an aspect of a veterinarian clinic where you would want to have multiple story buildings. So we're proposing a single-story building, and we would ask for that design waiver. The footprint of the building and the length of the building, the front of the building facing Route 206 is not over 100 feet, and then there is a portion of the building facing the side that I also believe is not over 100 feet, but that wouldn't face the public, that would face the driveway. And then the roof lines and the architectural treatment of the building. It is, as I said, only a single-story building, but it's not a flat roof building. It would be a roof building with dimensional asphalt shingles that provide for what we believe would be a attractive, not industrial, albeit we're in the industrial zone, an industrial-looking building. Excuse me a minute, I just want to get the architectural rendering that was submitted as part of the application. Okay, as part of the application, Architects Plus submitted a plan A2.1, which shows the elevation views of all four sides of the building, north, south, east, west. There is the roof with the asphalt shingles shown, that's not a two-story roof, but does have some dimensional appearance to it that doesn't make it look flat. There is a slope to it, providing some structure. And then there also, you can see on the south elevation, which is the elevation that would face 206, a window treatments that provide for some appearance that it's not just the back of a building, and also a gable end that faces that end of the building. So it's not a straight line appearance from Route 206. Our neighbors on the west side, which would be the industrial building at the bottom of the page, that portion of the building faces an existing detention basin, albeit there is still an architectural treatment there similar to the other three sides of the building. So there's not been a change in the architectural treatment or theme on any of the sides of the building. Are there any questions or issues with the architectural element or depiction? That's a color rendering that was submitted as part of the application. I have additional copies here if anybody doesn't have them with their packet this evening. And that's what we would endeavor to build.
Could I have one?
Yes.
I don't think we got the colored ones. We only have the black and whites. Thank you. So this is what you would propose the building to actually look like, Mr. Ford?
Correct.
Thanks.
The color exhibit I just passed out had at the bottom of the page, on the left-hand side is the south elevation, which is what would face Route 206, and on the right-hand side at the bottom of the page is what would face the parking lot. That's the main entrance. You see the doors, obviously the main entrance. Then in the middle of the page is the east elevation, which would be the elevation that would face the driveway. And then at the top of the page is the west elevation, which would face the existing detention basin and industrial facility, our neighbors at the bottom of the site plan. You can see on the west elevation, there is a couple of doors there. That leads to an exterior area and also emergency exit. There's like a walking area on that side of the building for animals or pets. That's identified on the site plan as well. That's far away from 206, the access driveway, and the parking area. Seems like an appropriate spot.
Is there any exterior lighting mounted on the building at all, or just on the ballast in the parking lot?
The area lighting is all pole-mounted lights. There would be building-mounted lighting only as what would be required by code for doorways and entrances.
Okay.
Now, I know that the architectural overlay design standards suggest, I'll say, pedestrian access, including suggestions to incorporate bike racks. We would seek a waiver. We're not proposing or anticipate people coming and going from the site on bikes. So there isn't a bike rack proposed. There is, obviously, the sidewalks and pedestrian areas solely to provide for access from the parking lot to the facility. And in this area, given the, proposed improvements to Route 206, which would be similar to what you see from Bays Inn north to Somerville Circle, it would be the concrete median down the middle of the 2 lanes in each direction.
Mike, given the 24/7 nature, is there further building lighting that would be required? Or is it just the entrances?
Well, the parking, when I say lighting,
I
it
know
would
we'll
be...
have it in the parking lot.
Right.
I get that. I'm just wondering, does the building, is there any requirement, or is there an expectation that we'd have additional lighting, given the 24-hour nature of the...
Perhaps maybe just an area light in that outdoor walking area for pets or the patients. Beyond that, it would be lights immediately adjacent to the doorways, and there's only doorways shown and then proposed on the parking lot side and that side where the outdoor walking area is. So we're not anticipating any activity in the green space or open area between the building and Route 206. So we could provide lighting there, but it's not, there's actually, there's an existing sanitary sewer easement that runs across the front of the property. That's where we actually have access to public utilities, and there's an underground stormwater management facility proposed in that area. So.
You'll have signage or a light on the sign possibly in the front?
The application wasn't submitted with any freestanding sign. There was, on the previous application approval, a building-mounted sign. What we've agreed to come back with a sign design package in compliance with your ordinance, no deviation. We're not asking for any deviation from that.
Okay. If I could maybe move this forward a little more quickly, I think everybody'd be happy. As far as I can see, I'll go through what I see as potential waivers. One is the single-story building, which you've already addressed. The primary public entrance facing the street, which you've already addressed. It appears that you will meet, from what you've submitted, all of the, or predominantly most, that's pretty good. It's getting late. Most of the design requirements regarding materials and trims, et cetera. Lighting would have to meet the engineer's approval. Perimeter of all parking lots is now down to J11. The perimeter of all parking lots should be visually screened through a combination of low masonry walls, et cetera. Can you describe how the parking lot is being screened from the neighboring properties?
Yes, okay. We're endeavoring to maintain the existing vegetation along our neighbors to the west. That's an existing industrial building parking lot. And we've utilized most of the, if not all of the tree mitigation plantings along our driveway, between the driveway and our most immediate residential neighbor. So that's where the landscaping is being proposed. And then there is landscaping within the parking lot itself.
Okay, and the overall landscaping plan is subject to the engineer's?
Correct. And the engineer actually pointed out the question about whether we've complied with the tree mitigation ordinance or not, and I believe we've already prepared and submitted on the record a compliance statement recognizing the economic hardship limitation.
Okay. And lastly, could you just discuss how the recycling and trash storage is being handled, particularly in light of those 3 requirements under L on page 6? Can you just go through those 3?
Okay. We're proposing a standard trash enclosure with a wood fence around, and that would be immediately adjacent to the parking lot along that common property line we have with the existing industrial building to the west. So to the degree we would need a waiver for utilizing standard concrete pad with the board-on-board wood fence around and a wood gate, rather than perhaps a metal or a masonry surround, we would request that
You're
that
proposing
waiver.
a solid wood fence?
Correct.
That's permitted?
Okay.
Okay. That's it from me.
Mr. White, anything that you need to address?
I think basically Mr. Ford at the first hearing addressed all my concerns.
I thought.
Don't forget, this is a rehash. We've
Yes.
been through this with the other
Just
boards, so.
Anything else come up that we didn't know about? Okay.
Right.
All right. Any questions, guys? Motion open to public?
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Okay, any questions for Mr. Ford on this application from the public? Please come up and just come to the microphone and say your name and address, and we'll swear you, ask your question.
Yeah. Janet Leopardo,
Is that mic on?
Spell your last name, please.
Leopardo.
Okay, just a little closer to the mic because it has to go on the
Okay.
mic. Thank you.
I'm trying to remember previous application and which was different and might have included like a wall or some kind of fence close to the one area of our property, and I'm hoping that the landscaping is sufficient to so that we won't be hearing a lot, well, I don't know if it'll be a problem, but I'm wondering if there's a difference in the two applications.
Okay. No difference, and to the degree that we can focus more of the plantings in your area, that I'd be willing to work that through Mr. White's office, and that's where we are proposing all the plantings. We didn't propose any plantings to buffer our parking lot from the property to the west, the other industrial user. Really, all the plantings are along the driveway.
But there's no continuation of our fence.
No, there was no fence proposed there before,
Well,
and nor are
from
we
years
proposing
ago,
to
like the
change their
first-
fence.
The very first application, not the one from,
You talking about the previous owner?
Yeah, in 2004 with Mr.
Yeah.
Schwerk, we didn't
Yeah.
propose a fence there
it
either.
was- okay.
No.
All right, thank you. That's
Yeah.
all of my question.
Thank
Yeah, we
you.
haven't changed the landscape plan at all, and I would defer to the board as a condition of approval. They can revisit and look at the 2006 plans to confirm what I'm saying.
Okay.
Ma'am, as long as you're up, I just want to make sure, Mr. Ford, and this is somewhat, I know we're, the current, is there going to be, what are we putting along the other side of the Leopardus' driveway for the current for the current occupancy relative to the parking? I think that may also have confused.
The proposed facility, the new driveway, would be curbed and paved in accordance
No, I'm
with the
talking
town
about-
standard.
Go to the, I think it's A3, you've got it listed, Michael.
This one.
Right. The current driveway leading to the current facility, what did the applicant propose to put as a buffer, as a barrier relative to the Leopardus
Yes.
property?
Yeah, I think the condition of the prior approvals, we already showed on the site plan for that application, that was the temporary trailer application.
Yep.
We're striping that area to delineate it so that users would know that that's the demarcation, and what we agreed to as a condition is to add signage per Mr. Maskey's
Okay.
suggestion.
You understand that, ma'am?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. I don't have any other questions from public? Okay. Do you have any other testimony or witnesses to bring up?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. So, any comments from Deus?
Just for continuity, because I think this all got hashed out last time, but it's been a few meetings we've been through. Just the Environmental Commission letter from September 6th on the back that the project meets all the current stormwater management plans, has been reviewed by our township engineer. Stormwater management information was sent to DRCC, and that you're going to update the LOI with the wetlands delineation, and that you're going to update the project regarding threatened and endangered species.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the DEP wetland renewal application's already been submitted. We made application to the DNR Canal Commission and received review comments back, and actually have satisfied those already. And like all of their approvals or their reports, they don't issue approval until they get a resolution of approval from the township. I believe that is the only outstanding issue with them. With regards to stormwater management, that's one of the subtle changes between the prior approval application and this application, is that we've added some porous pavement sections within the parking area to provide for total suspended solids or TSS removal in accordance with the new stormwater management best management practices. What was your?
Yeah.
And we also requested the T&E update from the state. Yes, and that would be reviewed as part of the LOI renewal as well.
Okay,
Yes,
great, thank you.
yes.
Okay. So, is there anything else you'd like to add, Council?
No, I think you've heard us talk enough tonight.
Okay, thank you. So do we have a motion to approve let me get back to my page here. Pardon me for a minute. File 17 PV04 MSPV for the preliminary and final major site plan with C-block variances for side yard setback, submission waivers for providing CIS, parking design waiver to construct the new veterinary hospital with parking and stormwater improvements in the property in the I-1 light industrial zoning district with all requirements stated prior by both our planner and our Mazer.
So moved.
We have a
Chairman, I'll approve that. I'll move that.
We have a second.
Second.
Okay, roll call.
A little premature.
Yes.
Scobah.
Yes.
Mr. Weinstein.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Green.
Yes.
Committee Belfour.
Yes.
Mayor Sarachi.
Yes.
Chairman LaFawn.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ford.
night.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Vaughn. And we have no correspondence in your packet. We have a scheduled next meeting of December 7th, 2017.
Mr. Chairman, there are two ordinances on the agenda for the 7th. They are both going to need to be reviewed and hopefully blessed by this board in order for the Township Committee to take action prior to the end of the year. If they cannot, then we have to start all over again. So I would ask if there are going to be missing board members. We would like to know sooner than later so that we can try to then schedule a special meeting, because the Township Committee meets when? 12th is the, all right, so obviously we're going to need a meeting that week if we can't make, we don't have enough quorum for the 7th. So I'm going to ask the board to authorize the chair, if necessary, to set a special meeting if we don't have a sufficient quorum for the 7th.
I'll make that motion.
And second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Can't do it at the business meeting?
We have no
that's
business,
Thanksgiving.
we don't have a business meeting. Well, we could have a business meeting, but I'm not so sure anybody would like to attend.
Yeah.
Depends on the games that day.
Are you saying it not going to be on the 7th? I'll be here for the 7th.
On the 7th. Anybody else know they won't be here on the 7th?
I will be.
I'll be here.
All right,
Looks like we're good.
we're good,
All
thank you. And then we do have an
And then-
application on for the 14th.
For the 14th, okay. So we will see you all next December 7th, and we will then entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned,
9:20.
9:20.